welcome to AILTV. As I'm always telling you guys that here at AILTV, we are hell-bent to bring you the best of Africans, all the best of the diaspora. Now, in this program, I've got a friend of mine, of course, he's called Freddy Macha, and this is the Freddy Macha Show. I am just here to switch images. It's not my show. But I just want to tell you just a small bit of what we've been doing, me and Freddy Macha. I have known Freddy Macha for many years. And in fact, he is the very first person to present a program on AILTV. And that is all, we go all the way back to 2009. Maybe I might be able to show you where we started as we go on. So I do not want really to take much of your time, but I want just to introduce to you Fred Macha, and who is going to be telling us all about what he has got on the show. So Freddy, we are on.
Thank you very much, everybody, including yourself, Joseph, or JJ. It's London, so we are talking about Africans in London and on those living in the diaspora. As tonight, we're gonna see a few Tanzanians from East Africa. So our languages are gonna be Swahili and English, because we speak those two languages well. The three guests we have multiple skills, so we'll go one by one. But each of them will present how they see Africa and Tanzania and different things. First, we'll start in Swahili. We'll go to Britain. On my first is Jumbe Omari Jumbe, who has been working for BBC for a long time, and then he in other places. So can we introduce him in one facet, which he was presenting? He was a broadcaster, but he's retired. Jumbe Omari Jumbe is currently roving around the world. He's with his family, doing his personal things. He's also multilingual. He speaks several languages, like you said. We'll talk as we go to see Jumbe. The second guest is Joyce Materego, very well skilled in Swahili and English as well. And she's also an accountant and a money expert. She's got her thing going with the finances, so we're going to see that as well. And she will be very interesting for those who want to know how to plan their money and how to use it and how to save it. The third guest, but not least, is Jacqueline Waziri, who is recently presenting a show called Tanzanite. She's about Tanzanian products in Tanzania and their friends. And she's got a very interesting book, which she's going to read from some of the stuff she's been writing, which is poetry. Three of them will have each time to speak. We'll start with Jacqueline, because we were speaking in English. Jacqueline was born in Tanzania. Correct me, Jacqueline. 1993.
That's correct.
And then Jacqueline came to London when she was seven. And
that's correct, Mr. Macha.
Yes, Swahili, and she's the granddaughter of the famous Swahili icon, Shaban Roberts, the writer. So Jacqueline, can we first tell us about the book you've written and why you wrote the book?
Amazing. Thank you so much, Mr. Freddy Macha. So my name is Jacqueline Waziri, and I am a UK-based poet and the author of Mwana Poetry Collection. The reason why I wrote Mwana Poetry Collection is because when I was growing up, I needed a voice of just someone to give me an identity of who I am, or a book that I can fit with and understand the messages and stories. And I thought to myself, why don't I be that person to create a story and identity for other youth in the African community, Black youths worldwide. Yes, so that's in short why I decided to write Mwana Poetry Collection. And the name Mwana itself it means child. So instead of using the word youth in English, I thought Mwana would be perfect, as that's the name that we use mostly in our mother tongue, Kiswahili.
Thank you. Asante sana. So you have a Swahili title, which is also, Mwana is a Bantu word, because Swahili is actually a Bantu or African language with other languages, but it's rooted in African tribal languages. So Mwana is both Swahili and some of the many Bantu speaking languages, which means a child, right? So can you read one of the poems at least, so we can hear or get a flavor of what you
Yes, of course. So I'll be reading a short poem from my book Mwana called Tanzanite. My earth skin till 6 feet under, for you hold light of birth, my dear melanin so ancient, stained by grace, diverse shades of complexion. I treasure you dear, my body of kingdom civilization. Darkness shining, low skin, dig me deep diamond. Thank you.
Thank you, Jacqueline Waziri. So your poems are mostly very short and to the point, correct?
Yes, that's correct. Because the
Uh,
stories that I want to share in my book, I just want them to be, they were very short memories and um, just short stories that I wanted to quickly share with the youth so they can get the message and just feel it straight away without being given too much information in one go.
mhm. So you tap into the to your generation, to the your fellow young people, mostly. Would you
Yes,
say that?
yes, that's correct. Because sometimes they don't like to read a lot of stuff. Um, so I think short poems it might appeal a bit better to them. But my book is for everybody generally, but my voice is for the youth so they can just feel an identity in the community.
Thank you, Jacqueline. I read the book very well, and it could look simple and it's focused on youth, but you have many topics. For instance, last year you wrote about the killing of George Floyd as well. So you got various topics, and you have serious, very serious poems. It's written in very few words, so you're quite deep, And then you have the talking about tribes. So the poem tribes, you're talking about values, you're talking about roots, and you talk about your personal things, your mother, your father. Tell us a little bit about your background as a child growing in Tanzania and then coming to London.
Yes, so I was born in Tanzania, and I came over to the UK when I was 7. So in that short space of leaving Tanzania at the age of 7 and coming to the UK, people may think that you were still very young to remember um, your, the journey that you walked there. But I hadn't forgotten my memories. I hadn't forgotten my stories with my father. I hadn't forgotten my stories with in my local community in Kinondoni. I still have those vivid pictures, and I wanted to share that with my friends, my families, because they are still vivid in my heart and in my mind, and I just wanted to put them in a book to share with the world.
Thank you. So that is a little bit of your background, a little bit. We will come back to that. Yeah. So
Yeah.
we have an author here, and the second person we're gonna look at is also a mother and an accountant, Joyce Materego. You also write poetry. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself as well? You don't have a book, but you have many things. You've been awarded a prize as an accountant here in the UK. Tell us a little bit about
Yes,
yourself.
thank you. Thank you, Mr. Macha. So, my name is Joyce Materego, also born in Tanzania. I came to England in my early 20s, and I just studied here for a little while. I studied accounting, and started working. And so I just honed my skills as a finance professional. I worked through the book publishing industry, media industry, and then after having my second child, I moved into the third sector. So I now work for an organization that it's got social care homes, and they look after people whose first language is not English, it's BSL, British Sign Language, which is classed as a language on its own, in its own right. So for me, it's like sort of going to another country, bringing my skills, but I don't speak the language. So I'm learning another language. I'm learning BSL actually. Um, I have many interests. I grew up in a family of very creative people, artists. My dad was an aviation engineer, but when he was younger, he was acting. He was doing theater acting. In fact, the my early memory of him being on stage through photographs was he played Julius Caesar in one of the plays that he did at school. And then my uncle, Joyce Materego, is a proper like theater actor and a filmmaker now. So I'm just used, I think I had a very rich upbringing with science and finances and art. And so my philosophy in life is that everything is connected. And I really, really believe in being curious and just understanding how the world is and how things are interconnected. And so I have started writing poetry and I really enjoy it. I think it has a lot in common with numbers because it's quite pithy. So you have very few words and you can talk about a lot. The same as numbers, you can have a short page with statistics, for example, or even accounts, and they tell a story. And so I feel like my job is to tell stories using either words or numbers or both. I'm also a mother to two children, a boy and a girl. I encourage them to be curious, and they're both very much numbers people as well as creative people. And I just watch them. I make sure I understand what makes them tick, and I push them in a way that enables them to contribute to the world in the best way possible. You know, yeah. So that's about me. Thank you.
Mm. Thank you, Joyce. That's a bit of you. So you're like Joyce. You're like Jacqueline. You traveled. You were born in Tanzania. You studied in India, and then you came to the UK, and you have many other facets. Um, what interests me is your talents, your family, because I knew your uncle Gonche. Used to work with him in the performing arts. As you know, I have an artistic background as well. So um, the thing that will interest us later to tell our viewers is the money thing. You're very good with that, and you have a podcast coming. So we're going to ask you um, how come you focused your professional job on the accountancy, but not on the artistic side? Because many of us got different choices, but why did you focus on the studying of the finances and not
Right.
study of
Thank you
the
for that question. It's a great question, actually, because throughout my studies, I was always academically really able and I could do pretty much anything I wanted to do. But in Tanzania, the education system, and I think it's mostly in all of Africa, it is like that. If you're in the top set, you're pushed into science. So I did my O levels and I did 10 O levels, spanning everything from bookkeeping to commerce to history, geography, physics, chemistry, and biology, maths. I did all of them. And then for A levels, I did physics, chemistry, and biology with an intention of going into medical school. And then I won a scholarship and I went to India. And then in India, it became very clear very early on that I was to do Bachelor of Science in Botany, Chemistry, and Zoology first before I could go into medical school. And during my first year, I realized that the education system in India wasn't really the same like in Tanzania, in that a lot of the stuff I was studying there had already covered back home. So I decided to leave and come to London, where we had friends, family friends. And because Tanzania was still part of the Commonwealth, we could just come here without a visa. So I just made a decision to come here. And when I got to England, because I'm so good with numbers, I'm just comfortable with numbers, I sort of thought, why don't I just do this? And I remember when I made a decision to go into accounting, I spoke to my dad about it. And he said he was a little bit disappointed because he was expecting me to go into medical school. And to which I responded, I said, well, I'm still going to be a doctor, but I'll be a doctor of money, because cash is like the bloodline of a business. And if cash is not there, if it's not looked after, then the business fails. And usually we register companies as if they're a person, they're an entity. And so I said to my dad, actually, everything is okay. I'm still going to be healing companies, which are like entities, like people. So that's how I ended up into accounting. But I really, really enjoy also the fact that accounting is not just to do with, ledgers, like in the olden days where you had a calculator and you're writing everything in a ledger. You can use computers to analyze data, to tell a story, as I was saying before. And so I just fell in love with it. And here I am. So I worked my way up. I did ACCA. I qualified way back in 2004, and now I'm a finance director, and I really, really like what I do. And my intention now is that I've worked through different industries and organizations. I do know that it's very, very important to have a good handle on finances for people and for organizations. And I've sort of created my own philosophy around money, which I'm very keen to share with people now. And I want to start doing that by starting a podcast, which is called Mind on Your Money. I'm working now on the logo, and I'll start airing it in February through Spotify, Google, and iTunes. And the reason I chose Mind on Your Money is because I
Joyce,
know.
Joyce, sorry, Joyce. We're gonna come into that in a bit. Don't give it away yet.
Sure, no
we'll come to
problem.
the later. Yes, yes,
No
yes,
problem.
yes, yes. Thank you. Now we know where you come from, so we'll come to that more details about how to handle money and your expert. Thank you
No
so much,
problem.
Joyce. Yes. We introduce our next one. It's not the last, but Jumbe, I hope you don't mind starting with the ladies.
No.
Jumbe, you're a Swahili broadcaster. You used to be very well known back in the days before the internet, and you're retired now. But there's more than just being a broadcaster. So can you? I met you when you used to present UBC's radio, and your voice was very known those days before the YouTube and podcasts. Can you tell us a little bit how you got into broadcasting? What is your early background in Tanga, in Tanzania, and what happened when you joined this media business?
Well, sorry, I've got a bit of cold. It is minus 14 here. Right. I'm in Norway now at the moment.
You're in Norway, right?
Yeah. Finally, to the uninteresting bit of story. Born in 1960 in Tanga, as you mentioned, I really did not plan to become a journalist, but life made me a journalist. In the early ages, I traveled to Kenya, where I studied up to secondary school, and then moved to Sudan, continued with the education. By then, I had already acquired Arabic language as well. And from Sudan, I moved to Iran, Syria, where I studied comparative literature at the University of Damascus in Syria. It is a pity that now Syria is one of the most devastated countries in the world. But it used to be a light in the Arab world where it had a very good education system, social system, a lot of freedom, incomparable in the Arab world. So I studied there. When I finished, I came back to Tanzania trying to find some work because I really wanted to help with my experience um, to uplift my society, to uplift the people in my area. But unfortunately, I could not get a job. And this is not just my story, it's a story of many diaspora persons who have really immense talents, experiences, but then they're disappointed when they go back home, trying to impart the experiences they had gained in foreign countries. I think this is the topic of this show, in a way. But then what happened is that I wanted to be involved in the foreign affairs because I was really, I thought I knew a lot about foreign issues, especially Arabic, those related to Arab countries, having written a book when I was at university about the Arab world and politics in there. But then I could not get a job. And that is really because of sinister personal interest in the foreign ministry. So I decided to leave. And that is after 5 months of trying there. I went back to Kenya where I became an editor of, sorry, I can't hear. Sorry, you're speaking, are you speaking to me? All right. Editor of a small publishing company in Mombasa. Worked there for a year. Then I joined the East African British BBC office, where I became a monitor, basically listening to radios and television and transcribing what I hear into English. I used to be a monitor in several languages, including Arabic, French, and Swahili. After a year there, I moved to London to become a broadcaster at the BBC, and there the story ends. So I worked for the BBC for almost 16 years, and then I decided on my own to escape a rat race in London, and I I joined the UN, first in Sudan, then in Chad, then in other places in Africa. Let me cut short the story, including IOM, International Organization for Migration in Geneva. And finally, until I retired, I came back again to the UN peacekeeping in Darfur, Sudan, and I retired at the end of the 2019. At the moment, I'm focusing more on spiritual issues, having just translated the Quran, the Holy Quran, into Swahili. And I have a project to, I know probably you may agree or may not agree with this. I have observed that the African society is really disintegrating in terms of values, in terms of many things that we were holding dear. So I want to put a book on behavior. This won't be a religious book. It will be just about explaining good behavior, how to deal with issues with people, and this I want to be taught to various, the children from kindergarten, because those are the ones who I realized that parents don't speak to their children about what you do. For example, when you meet a foreigner, somebody you don't know, what do you do? So children don't pick these things up.
So,
What they
Jumbe, sorry,
do, if they are not taught,
Jumbe,
yeah.
Jumbe,
Okay, we'll
we'll
come to
talk
that.
about
Yeah.
that in detail. Yeah, now we
All
know where
right.
you come
Good.
from. Sorry to cut you
Yeah.
there. Again,
No,
like
no, no. That's fine.
Materego,
That's
and
fine. I'm
to make sure.
talkative. A journalist is
Yeah,
always
no, it's okay. It's a chat show. So
right. Okay.
you will talk. We'll talk. So the thing I want to our viewers to be aware of when we speak of Arab or Arabic culture, it's very important
Yeah.
to say that in East Africa, Arabic
Yeah.
culture is part of the culture. And
Yes.
so could you explain more of this, how Swahili has come out? Because most people think Swahili is Arabic or is Arabic culture. And just explain what is it?
No and yes. Actually, in short, Kiswahili as a language was there before the arrival of the Arabs. Of course, the Arabs had a connection with Africa for a long time. Maybe goes back as far as the ninth century. Um, so, but when they came to East Africa, they mingled with the first people on the coast. Now, those people were speaking a language which at that time was called Kingozi along the coast. And this is the real material of Swahili. The Arabs, when they met the locals, they wanted to really, because it was a business, they brought things from Yemen, from the Gulf of Arabia. So they wanted to sell. When they wanted to sell, they had to understand what the locals want and how much they will pay in exchange. So they learned a bit of Kingozi, and the Ngozi people also learned a bit of Arabic language, so that to trade. And after many, many years, those words, trading words, stuck in Swahili. And that is why you see a lot of Kiswahili has very rich vocabulary in trade. Trade vocabulary is very rich in Swahili because they started with those words, and then slowly by slowly, when they became rulers, then of course the people who are ruled always imitate and imitate the rulers. So when the Arabs became rulers, they took more than just the mere commercial words, and that is how Swahili, became, integrated in Arabic. But actually, Swahili is not an Arabic language, because a language, when you speak about a language, it is not just vocabulary as a language. It is the structure of the language. So the Swahili, for example, when we speak about noun and subject and object, the Arabs will start with a verb. Daraba Zaidun Amra, for example, which means Zaid has beaten, and this is a very common example. Zaid has beaten Amr. But we don't say that. The Swahilis say, okay, the Swahili say Zaid has beaten Amr, but the Arabs say uh, uh, has beaten Zaid Amr. You see, they start with a verb rather than a noun. So the language is not about vocabulary only. Vocabulary, all languages in the world actually borrow vocabularies. In English, there are even more vocabularies borrowed from other languages than there are in Swahili, if you count. So those who say Kiswahili is an Arabic, they just look at the words borrowed, but they don't look at the structure. The structure, how we use the noun, how we can actually from a noun we can derive a verb, something like that. In Arabic, it's not like that. So, in
Exactly.
short, Swahili, and at any rate, estimates of borrowing from the Arabic vary between 30 to 40% of words. But there are languages in the world which borrowed more than that amount, like the Farsi, the Iranian language, and the Urdu, borrowed more than that, but they don't call those languages Arabic. So I think this is a misinformation. Kiswahili is a Bantu language. And I don't know what
So
else
Jumbe,
you want to know
how
about the
about the
Arabs.
culture? So the culture,
The,
because it's about the culture. Yeah, the culture.
well, okay, the culture, the Arab culture is really has
Swahili.
been greatly affected by by the religion. And when they came to the coast of East Africa, also they came with that culture. So the Swahili, now we'll call them Swahili because they changed the Kingozi and adopted the Swahili. So Swahili means, Sawahili means the coast. Yeah? So the coastal people also have been affected by the Arabic culture, which in turn was affected by by the religion. But mind you, our culture, the Swahili culture, was so strong that the Arabs who were living in East Africa were speaking Kiswahili. Actually, many Arabs. You see, when two cultures meet, the strongest culture will sort of overrule the weaker culture. That's everywhere. You know, the strongest culture will dominate the weaker culture. So when the Arabs came to the coast, actually they learned Swahili. Many Arabs forgot about their Arabic language and they started speaking Swahili. This means the Swahili culture was even stronger than the Arabic then. It's
Thank
not the
you.
case at the moment because many Arabs then moved from the villages to the cities, and then they adopted some, you know, some cultures of ruling clique. But in what I want to show how Swahili culture is so strong is that foreigners who came to the coast of Africa actually adopted Swahili rather than affecting Swahili. Otherwise, the whole coast would have spoken Arabic, pure Arabic, not the Kingozi we know now. So the Swahili
That
culture
is.
is very strong. Yeah.
Thank you, Jumbe. We will expand that a little bit with our other speakers. Thank you. We'll go into details. As I say, we're introducing our guests, our three guests. You're very special, three of you. So we will go back to Jacqueline. And one of the reasons that you're very interesting, Jacqueline, is because your great grandfather is known as the father or the grandfather. It's not the father now, great grandfather, or Babu, of Swahili writing. And his poetry, his novels they're considered like
Yeah.
Shakespeare in English. They're quite something. He was awarded prizes, Somerset Vaughan's Prize from England, and the OBE or MBE. And you have inherited this. And in your book, you have a Swahili poem, or has got like a Swahili poem, and you run this Tanzanite show. So you actually incorporate all the facets that your great grandfather was in that. So talk us very briefly about the Tanzanite, and then we'll branch more into details what you do and everybody. So the Tanzanite show, why you
Yes,
do
thank
that, and you
okay. Thank you, Mr. Macha. So because I'm from Tanzania and I wanted to showcase my talent to the world, I thought, what can we do as Tanzanians together to show Tanzanians to come as a community? Because not many people, if you ask a friend, do you know anybody from Tanzania? They'll probably say, I know one person from Tanzania. So I wanted to make a community of Tanzanians to come together every single month to show their art, to show their talent, to show what they do that's fantastic. And I thought, why not host a Zoom show as we are in this pandemic? Zoom show that can bring all of us together to represent Tanzania and to represent the great work that we do and to showcase it to the world. So Tanzanite Platform is an event that highlights and portrays artists, entrepreneurs, like Mr. Freddy Macha, like Joyce Materego, and many other people that are so creative and are doing positive work to bring forth to the community and to the world. So Tanzanite events is to highlight and portray Tanzanians to the world. Yes.
So one of the poems you've written is the Swahili. Can you read it just to hear the sound of the language? I know we're going to talk about Swahili in a minute in detail. You know what, your poems,
one of the poems that I've written?
Yeah, you have Swahili words in there.
Yes. I've got one called Mama. I will read. Let's just find page number 20.
And Mama cannot be translated. Mama is, everybody what Mama is in different languages.
Yes, it's a very short poem again, and it's called Mama. Mama ni mama, uso wa dunia na moyo wa simba. Mama ni mama. Mother is mother, face of earth and heart of a lion. Mother is mother. Na upendo kutoka kwa Mungu, and her love sent from God. Na nguvu zake hazina mfano, and her strength close to none. Mama ni mama. Thank you.
Asante sana. Thank you very much. What were you thinking when you wrote that poem? Is it, I think Joyce and Jumbe can identify with the words. Why do people always talk about mothers and yeah?
Yes, I decided to speak about mother because I believe that she is the face of the earth, and she because she's a representative of life. So I thought it was very important to speak to our women, speak to our females, empower them, mothers, even myself becoming a mother and having my mother as well, and unfortunately losing my mother. I just thought it would be a dedication, and I think this is my only poem that's written in Kiswahili because it just shows my emotion for my mother and my mothers. And yeah, I just wanted to share my mother tongue for my mother in that poetry, Mama, if that makes sense.
So Joyce Materego, you've been in Tanzanite, in the Tanzanite event hosted by Jacqueline, and you read some poems there, and you also translate. You've been working as a bilingual interpreter for years. Swahili is not as promoted as it. You think it's promoted as it should be? Do we take it seriously? Do we make a language known? Are we still dependent on English? Or what is your take on that?
I would say yes, we are still dependent on English, but the reasons are very complex. I think really the people who always speak their own language under any circumstances have a very strong sense of self, and they pass that on to their children. What I know of Kiswahili, even growing up in Tanzania, was that it was a language that you use every day. It's taken for granted that everybody can understand Kiswahili, but English was the language of the learned, and English is the language that shows how intelligent, how intellectual, how exposed you are to the ways of the world, and possibly how likely you are to have a successful life, once you've gone through the education system. I know that our first president, Julius Nyerere, was making a huge initiative about using Swahili all the way to university. But that, in a way, just didn't take off. I think by the time it was supposed to come on, he was leaving the office, and globalization was taking place across the whole world, including Africa. And so I think there was a little bit of a collision there, and English sort of continued to be the main language for the learned. However, the tide is turning, and I know that now Swahili is being learned and spoken, ironically, is a lot by people who are not necessarily Tanzanian, who are not the people who should be actually advertising Kiswahili. But I don't think everything is lost. We are here, and I for one, love my mother tongue, and I have started writing poetry purely in Swahili. They can be interpreted as well, but I do my poems in Swahili, and I usually explain what they're about. I explain the context in Swahili when I perform them, but when I recite, I just do it in Swahili.
Thank you. We're going to ask you to read a poem at a point, your Swahili poems. Before we do that, I wanted to ask Jumbe's thoughts on the language. We've spoken a lot about Swahili, Jumbe. I mean, we used to teach Swahili to children here in London, you remember, back in the days. And you interpret. You just said you're interpreting the Quran into Swahili. Do you think, as a broadcaster or a former broadcaster, as somebody who is concerned about the continent, Swahili has a chance to be a vehicle for economic development? Because most people think that if you learn English, you'll make more money, you'll have more success. If you speak in Swahili or you write things in Swahili, you're not gonna have any chance. What is your take on that as an experienced linguist?
Yes, I'm a huge proponent of Kiswahili as a language of teaching, and I mean, let's give Swahili all credit. That look, Fred, what I have observed in this world is that only people who learn in their own languages are the ones who could invent things. And when we go around, you look at the Chinese, the Iranians, the Turkish, all the Japanese, all these guys learn, education in their own language. Then they can invent. And look at the situation in Africa. We mostly learn things in borrowed languages, colonial languages, either French, English, or other languages, and we end up just having that education which really we can only copy. We cannot invent. So to that point, I say we will never go anywhere in terms of invention, in terms of creativity, if we don't turn the real education, our education system, into our own language. Because only when the brain actually, people think that when we learn for the day. But no, you learn even when you are asleep, you see. But people, in their sleep, they think according to their mother tongue or their first language, not on the language, the borrowed language. So when you learn in English, you sever that learning process when you sleep. Because then when you sleep, your brain will be thinking in your Kiswahili. That's why we don't create things from our own. We don't invent. So I would say I'm going fully throttle with learning Swahili and teaching Swahili. But there is a condition. You see, nowadays we hear lots of talk about, let's make Swahili an African language, but we haven't worked for it. We have not worked. It's just a wishful thinking. In order to have a language that can accommodate learning, we need, at least for any education, any, any genre of education, to have at least 20 books on that genre, 20 reference books. We don't have that in Swahili. So we just talk that let's turn our educational system into, using Swahili, but we don't have, reference books in Swahili. So unless first we do this, I will not advise that we should turn our learning system into Swahili. No, not yet. Because I've seen
Jumbe,
even in Arabic where they have a
sorry, Jumbe, we have
yeah.
Swahili is an African Union language. Swahili is being
Yes.
taught in South Africa. We have maybe
Right.
it's becoming 2063 is going to become the lingua franca of Black people. I mean, in about 40 years, it's going to be
Yeah.
made the language of Black people in the world. Isn't that a plan? Is a plan?
That can be, but really, something that is amiss here is that we talk the talk, but we don't walk the walk. This is what I'm talking about. There isn't much work towards improving and upgrading and writing and teaching Swahili. Today, if you ask me which institute in Tanzania that teach Swahili, I mean, a quality institute in Swahili that teaches Swahili, I don't know. Really, we haven't worked. So the talk is something, but the work is another thing.
So, JJ, you were raising your hand. You wanted to.
Oh yes,
jump in?
I'm raising my hand. This, you see, this what Jumbe is talking about. It has tickled my mind. You see, one thing that I have realized: Africans like to come out with chanting slogans, and we are very good, as you have just said. We are all talking. So if we haven't actually worked for something, or at least a plan, we understand Swahili is spoken, it's got about 10 million speakers around the world. But we also have now to ask ourselves, do our leaders really have it in their mind? Do they, what are they doing to prepare for this takeoff? Because now we know we should capitalize on the number of people speaking Swahili. As you have put it right, you have actually to work for it. It's not about slogan chanting. Yes, I feel better when I hear Americans speaking Swahili, but you need to ask yourself, why are they really speaking Swahili? In China, Swahili is being broadcast ever since I was very little. I could actually hear, we could just tune in, with our transistor radios. You hear the Swahili spoken in China, but we didn't actually bother to ask, why are they speaking Swahili? So this is,
yeah.
Go ahead, sir.
Just to, and I don't want to deny chances for other guests, please, but I will add something. There are two channels here. Excuse me. Swahili as a teaching language, that will concern us more, and the Swahili for non-Swahili speakers, how we will spread Swahili. I'm all for spreading Swahili, but I want to make a suggestion. Kenya and Tanzania, this major, by the way, you say we have 10 million Swahili speakers. I think I count more than 150 million Swahili speakers, and I'll tell you for that. In Tanzania alone, we are 55 million people. All of those, or maybe they speak Swahili as probably a second language, but full. 55 and Kenya maybe 45. And many people don't know that in Congo, where the population is over 100 million, actually Swahili is the biggest language after Lingala, which is spoken by more than 40 million in Congo alone. And then take a bit here from Uganda, a bit there from Comoro, a bit there. I mean, there are more than 150 million Swahili speakers, either the first as a first mother tongue or a lingua franca. Well, most of them speak it as a lingua franca. Even me, I mean, my mother tongue is not Swahili, but we speak it fluently as first language. Yeah, so we are more than 150 million. Now, this is there is a huge potential there to make Swahili an African language. There isn't another language. Okay, we say, for example, the Hausa language maybe is spoken by 200 million, but it is contained in Nigeria and a few countries. It's not spread as Swahili. It's just like Chinese.
Yeah.
It's spoken by a billion people, but it is in China and probably Vietnam. But English, which is spoken, so the spread of Swahili is just like the spread of English. Yeah. Um, so there is a huge potential. But why Kenya and Tanzania can't come together, create this huge institute of teaching Swahili? Why can't we do that? Uh, and
Well, I
so
would
that's
say,
at the moment. Yes.
Sorry.
Yes.
Could I
Okay. Go
just
ahead.
moderate you a little bit? Sorry. So we're branching to the next phase of our discussion, which I want us to talk about, is how to make things work and make us progress. So language is one of them, and language is a tool of communication, as we know. So I wanted to go to the next level of talk, like with Jacqueline. She's produced a book with a title in Swahili. She's running a show that promotes the Tanzanite idea. And the question is, Jacqueline, is a bit of more thinking, because we talk a lot about how to think. If you were thinking that the title, if you had put the title in English, say you put instead of one, it's a baby or child, would you think that would have more? Is this a reason? There's a reason why you put that title there. Were you thinking of economics? Were you thinking of, as a book that you selling here in the diaspora? Is this book is selling? People buying it every day. Is 3 months? Yeah. So
Yes. Yes.
what are you
The
thinking?
name Wana came to me because it was just the perfect name for the book, because I wanted to dedicate it to youth, and it will stand out. Instead of youth, Wana will stand out to my fellow Tanzanians, firstly, but also to the world. They will be curious to know, what does Wana mean, and that can start off a conversation. So it's all about starting conversations, and once you can start a conversation, it begins to open a door. It begins to open doors, windows for opportunity and for change. So that's why the book is titled Mwana in Kiswahili, to start a conversation first in.
Sure, and you're thinking of branding, because the Tanzanite thing is exciting. Like yesterday, you had this wonderful media personality who spoke about many things, education. You kind of open doors for young and old as well. Your show has got young and old, different ages. So
Yes.
this kind of thing, yeah. Elaborate on that a little
Yes,
bit.
Yes, the name Tanzanite Events also for the show, because it's our crystal from our country, it stands out, and it also gives Tanzania its credit due. And it's just to represent Tanzania, it's to represent where we come from, and to represent our voice and what we have. So I just thought, what can represent us as a group that is so precious and like a jewel, and that's us. So it's just me as a poet using plain words, and I just thought that would be the perfect name for Tanzanite Events, to portray our people and to also show that our country has so much fantastic and amazing things, and to show to the world. Yes.
So we'll come to our money person here, Materego, because Joyce, you stand between these two ideas of arts and science and money. So how do we? Because you started a podcast to manage money. There must be a reason you thought about that. I mean, apart from the Zambian lady who wrote a book, you must think there's a niche there.
I believe there is a niche there, and I think there's a strong link between languages and money, and the way we communicate thoughts and ideas as well. I believe education is coming from a Latin word, I believe is called educe, which means to bring out that's what latent, something that's already there to bring it out. And like Jumbe was talking before, if you're going to bring out what is already in there, it's best done in someone's mother tongue. However, there is a link between money and relationships as well. So if we are going to work, say, for example, with our fellow Africans in Kenya to create an institute, to do anything, any kind of business, you need language for communication. You also need relationships. And relationships, I believe, are the most potent form of money. So my podcast is going to be talking about money, not in a way that everybody talks about it. Everybody knows cash, and cash for me is a physical manifestation of money, but it's not the real money. The real money comes from value within, and the most potent level of money is relationships. Without relationships, there is nothing happening. And to form a relationship, you need two things. You need a language. So the Arabs, when they came to East Africa and they took Kingozi, that for me as a finance person, that's not a coincidence at all. Because if you're going somewhere and you want to do business with the local people, you, the person who came there, need to learn the language so you can do transactions. And if you learn someone's language, guess what happens? They trust you. And trust is the foundation of any relationship, be it a personal relationship, a business relationship, country to country relationship, even continents to continents. And I think that is actually the main issue with us Africans. It doesn't seem like we have trust between ourselves, amongst ourselves. And without trust, we cannot really have a meeting of the minds and talk to each other properly. We cannot teach each other the skills we have. We cannot share knowledge. We can't do business. And so this, for me, is a main issue why we are, not just in Tanzania, not just in East Africa, as Africans as a whole, as Africans in the whole world, because the problem is not just within Africa where we speak Swahili mostly, it's with Black Americans, it's with Jamaicans, it's with Caribbean people. Relationships, we are not able to connect together. And my podcast is going to be talking about others. So I've identified 6 forms of money, and cash is the 7th. And for me, cash is something that comes as a result of managing all the other forms of money, relationships being one, another one is ideas and vision, another one is data, information and knowledge, and education is formed in that. And languages also is data and information. You exchange that. I know from my experience that people, when I grew up in Tanzania, if you share information with other people, if you share what you know with other people, you're seen as strange or crazy even because you're sharing something that's valuable, because everybody understands it's money. But if you share with others, you're not reducing your knowledge, you're actually multiplying the knowledge. So this is what we're missing. I think Indians share knowledge. They do. I know that. I lived in India myself. I know that they share knowledge. Everything they know, they share with each other. They make money together by sharing knowledge, by having strong relationships, by having trust, trusting that they will do the right thing. They also have very strict rules if you don't do the right thing. They're very, very disciplined people. They share their vision. They also share their intellectual property, and they keep together. And that, with their business acumen, it brings out cash. So for me, it's just you squeeze it all with acumen and you get cash.
So it's all about people working together. So thank you, Joyce.
It's
So we're
all
gonna
about
one day we're
people.
gonna, yes, people is not, it's not about the money. So we're gonna feature that in the program. So I want us
People
to
are the
finish.
money, Freddie. People are the
Yes,
money.
yes, yes. Thank you. So yes. So we're gonna finish by speaking Swahili now. Yeah. So so we don't want to speak Swahili as if it's something else from what we are. Kwa hiyo tutamalizia sasa hivi kwa vile muda unakwenda, kwa kutaka mujaribu kutueleza kifupi kwa watu ambao wanasikiliza baadaye.
Yeah, can I just say one small thing, commending Sister Joyce about, because this is a very, very important and really is something that can change us, trust. What she said about trust and how Indians are doing better. When you look at in the world, you'll see all those communities which actually embodied trust. They progress. They went forward. And now in Britain, even you have a finance minister who is an Indian, Sushi or someone like that.
Yeah.
But many
exactly.
people don't know that. Many people don't know that the Africans were there before the Indians. I mean, in Britain, long time ago, and probably we won't have a finance minister soon because we don't have trust. We are not together. I think that is even in a small examples in Africa. When you look at the Somalis, they're far ahead in terms of development, although they have problems in their countries because they trust each other.
That's an important point. So kwa hivyo watazamaji tunawatazama hapa ni watu wanaozungumza Kiswahili, ni wakazi wa Tanzania ambao wanaishi uhaibuni. Kuna kizazi kipya na kizazi cha katikati na kizazi changu ambacho tunaitwa watu wa makamo, watu wazee, watu ambao tumeishi muda mrefu. Sasa tungetaka kifupi tu watueleze. Tunaye Jumbe Omari Jumbe ambaye ni mtangazaji wa vipindi vya BBC zamani ambaye amestaafu sasa hivi, na Joyce Materego ambaye ni mhasibu, ni mtu wa hesabu na pia ni mshairi, msanii, na dada yetu kijana Jacqueline Waziri ambaye ana kipindi au mtandao unaitwa Tanzanite Events ambaye anakuza mada mbalimbali zinazohusiana na vipaji vya Watanzania vinahusiana na Tanzania, wa Tanzanite wa Afrika. Sasa swali ambalo ningependa kuulizeni kabla mjaondoka, kifupi tu, usizungumze kirefu sana, ni nini ambacho Waafrika wanahitaji kufanya sasa hivi ili tuendelee? Ukiacha bla 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 ambazo zimepita miaka 60, 50 sasa hivi ya uhuru, ni kitu gani ambacho kinatakiwa kifanywe? Kianze na Joyce. Kitu gani ambacho kinatakiwa kufanywe kuendeleza Afrika? Kifupi tu, umezungumzia mambo ya uchumi, wewe ni mwana uchumi, mtu wa pesa. Kifupi tu, nini tufanye?
Sawa, kuaminiana na pia kuthamini utu wetu na kuthamini tulichonacho wenyewe. Tuna vipaji vingi sana, tuna uwezo mwingi sana, tuna upeo mkubwa sana. Mifumo yetu imetenganishwa kidogo kwa ajili ya mambo ya ukoloni na nini, lakini kama Tanzania sasa hivi tumeshakuwa zaidi ya miaka 50 kama taifa huru. Ni wakati sasa wa kuacha kulaumu ukoloni na kujiangalia sisi wenyewe tunachoweza kufanya. Tuna uwezo, tuna akili, tuna watoto wetu, tufanye kazi. Tuache kuongea, tuanze kufanya kazi sasa.
Yupo rafiki, kazi gani ambayo tunaweza kufanya? Dada Materego amesema hapo sasa hivi ni kazi gani ambayo tunaweza kufanya? Kama kutoa ushauri, ndio wewe mshauri wetu.
Kama Afrika tuna bado mambo mengi sana tunahitajia, lakini kazi kubwa ninayotaka ionekane kwanza ni kuweza kujilisha sisi wenyewe. Hiyo ndo kazi kubwa. Tutafanya maendeleo yote, lakini kwanza tuweze kujilisha sisi wenyewe. Kila Mwafrika awe anakula milo mitatu quality milo. Hakuna rais yoyote toka uhuru anayeweza kudhamini hata mlo mmoja quality meal kwa Mwafrika. Hakuna mpaka hivi sasa. Kwa hiyo sisemi kwamba tusitazame huko kwingine, kwa sababu vitu vingine ukiendeleza utalii nini vyote vinasaidia, lakini lazima Waafrika kwanza tujitahidi kuweka kilimo chetu vizuri, kiwe cha kisasa. Nadhani hiyo ni muhimu sana.
Bala kuagiza mahindi kutoka Marekani. na sisi ni Afrika tuna
badala ya kuagiza mahindi, badala ya kununua chakula kutoka nje, tuweze kujilisha wenyewe na kujilisha vizuri. Sio kujilisha tu, sio kila mtu aweze kula hii ugali mara tatu. Anaweza kula ugali mara tatu, lakini afya Afrika yani za watu zimeharibika sana kwa sababu watu hawawezi kula vizuri. Huo ndio ukweli.
Naomba kusema tafadhali haraka tu kwamba hiyo inawezekana tukianza kuthamini ukulima, kujithamini sisi wenyewe, hiyo kuthamini ukulima na kuwathamini wakulima. Na ukianza kusikia majumbani wazazi wanaongea na watoto wanasema, ukikuwa mkubwa nataka uwe mkulima. Sasa hivi tunasikia nataka uwe daktari, nataka uwe engineer, nataka uwe mhasibu. Hakuna mtu, wachache sana wanaongelea ukulima. Mpaka tukianza ukulima na ukulima wa kisasa.
Kwa sababu ukulima hivi sasa Afrika haumfaidishi mkulima, kwa vile kwanza bado kilimo chetu ni kile kile cha zamani. Mtu analima kiasi cha kujilisha yeye mwenyewe ekari moja, sio kilimo cha biashara. Watu yani mawazo yao juu ya kilimo ni yale ya kuweza tu kula, sio hawajui kwamba kilimo kuna watu milioni 5 ni Marekani ambao wana survive juu ya kilimo na mamilioni wengine zaidi kama kazi. Kwa hiyo hilo ndio ninalolisema, lakini huwezi kulima kwa jembe la mkono kilimo hicho unachozungumzia, huwezi. Kwa hiyo hiyo ni lengo la serikali kuwawezesha wakulima, kwa sababu wakulima wa Afrika nzima bado maskini. Huwezi kumwambia mtu awe na tractor yeye mwenyewe au serikali lazima ingie hapa.
Asante Jumbe. Sasa sanaje vitabu vinaweza kusaidia Waafrika kuendelea? Kwa mfano Jacqueline ameandika kitabu hichi, kitabu kinaweza kuendelea, vitabu vina maana yote, maana tuwasomi vitabu siku hizi. Jacqueline, unaweza kujibu kifupi Kiswahili?
Yes, Mr. Freddy. I think time is changing, and people are now learning that it's important to read, and the power of reading and the knowledge and power of reading. So little but surely, I'm sure the change will come. And that's what I'm always holding on to, change and hope. So definitely, and as an African myself, but firstly, as a Black young girl, and because Black and African, sometimes we get confused. So I want to include everyone, the Caribbean and us Africans, that we are one. And once we acknowledge that, we can move a step forward, and we can start to think of the longer term progress rather than the short term of just today. So it's about thinking about tomorrow and our future. And once we get into that mindset, I think we are on the right path as Africans and as Black people. So thank you so much.
Asante sana Jacqueline Waziri. Asante Joyce Materego. Asante Jumbe Omari Jumbe. Kwa mara nyingine tena ni mwanzo tunaanza kuzungumza, tutaendelea kuzungumza zaidi. Mazungumzo hayaishi haya. Naona kila mtu ana jambo la kusema, lakini imetosha kwa leo. Nashukuru sana, mmechukua muda mrefu kuja hapa, tumewasumbua, mmetoka siji wapi, kutoka mlipokuwa kule, wengine mlikuwa safari, wengine mlikuwa mnapika. Nimefurahi sana mmekuja kwenye kipindi chetu. Kwa hiyo
ni pleasure siku zote kutumikia dada zetu, na kama ukisikia mtu mmoja tu akiweza kuaidhika kama tunavyosema na haya, tutakuwa yani gharama zote tulizoziingia si kitu kusema kweli.
Kabisa.
Kwa hiyo hii tuko online, ni Africans in London online, iko mtandaoni. Kwa hiyo tutaendelea kuwatazama na tutarejea tena kuwasumbua na kuwaita mje kuzungumza siku nyingine.
Sawa Chris.
Na mambo mengi ya kusema. Najua kila mtu ana jambo la kusema, lakini
thank you so much.
Leo imetosha.
Nashukuru sana.
Thank you.
What I'm appealing to you viewers, whether you speak Swahili or you speak English, listen to these guys, what they have said. And this is the beginning of the show. I have been saying that Africans has got a whole bright people, very intelligent, very articulate. So on this show, well, you know, what can I say? You've got Jumbe Omari. That one is up there with the rest. So, and then you have got the lady who understands the numbers. See, sometimes we hear accountants and stuff like that. She has got the brain. And then you have got a young writer, Jackline. She has got whole lots of ideas to educate us people in the diaspora. So, we will be back. We will be back with more interesting. We're going to include music. You have to remember, AILTV is composed of many musicians, me being one of them. So, until then, ciao.
Kilimanjaro.